Earlier today, we spoke to Dean Cheng. He's an expert on China for the Heritage Foundation. I began by asking him why he questions the results of this report.
This is one of those Ronald Reagan trust but verify moments. And in the case of the Chinese, they have provided us with very limited means of verification. The Chinese, by their own reporting, if you look back in January of 2020, were saying about how they hadn't followed their own pandemic control guidelines and reporting requirements. They then didn't cooperate with the WHO back then. And with this most recent report, they were very carefully controlling where the WHO team could go, who they could talk to. I liked one description that said that we had this image of Sherlock Holmes out there with magnifying glasses and swab kits, and that was not actually what happened. So we know the Chinese conceal a lot of things, and unfortunately, COVID has been one of the things that they've been pretty clearly concealing a lot of details even from their own people.
What about the process by the World Health Organization and those investigators on the ground trying to get answers? Did they get what they needed?
Almost certainly not. We have several problems with this. The first is, of course, the extended timeline for sending the WHO team in the first place. So by the time they got there, for example, the wet market had been pretty much sanitized by the Chinese. Second of all, we have questions about some of the people involved from the WHO side, people who had financial and other interests in China, whose companies had, for example, worked with the Wuhan Institute of Virology. If you're going to do an audit of a company, having a member of the corporate board serving as one of your auditors would probably raise some questions. That seems to have been the case with the Chinese. And then, of course, from the WHO team's own statements, they got into shouting matches in some cases with the Chinese over what they had a right to access. This was not a wide open investigation. So who was doing it, when they were doing it, how they were doing it, there are some serious questions about every one of these aspects.
You have also been critical of President Biden, who agreed to rejoin the WHO early in his administration, shortly after taking office. Why do you think that was a mistake?
So, President Biden rejoining WHO without the WHO reforming any of its actions. I mean, considering how the WHO, for example, ignored warnings from Taiwan, senior members of the WHO literally walked off of an interview because they were being asked hard questions by journalists like yourself about, hey, what about these Taiwanese warnings? Why were they ignored? We've seen no evidence that the WHO has restructured itself, reformed itself, tried to actually be more open to outside information, to walk back in and say, here, how much money do you want? Here, we'll put our faith and credit to support yours, seems kind of foolhardy and certainly not a very good negotiating tactic. I mean, walk in and say, how much money do you want when you say you want to buy a car? Guess what? The car dealership is probably going to take advantage of that.
We're talking with Dean Cheng. He is a research fellow for Asian Studies at the Heritage Foundation.